Have you ever seen a moment so perfect it felt like nothing could go wrong, until it did? That was the morning of Lena's wedding day. The sun was shining through the glass walls of the crystal garden hall. Every flower, every candle, and every smile looked picture perfect. But behind those smiles, something dark was waiting to unfold. Lena stood before the mirror, admiring herself in a gown worth more than most people's yearly pay. She whispered, "I deserve nothing but perfection." Her bridesmaids nodded nervously. Lena's attitude wasn't new. She came from a wealthy family that believed money defined respect. Michael, her soon-to-be husband, was the opposite, kind, down-to-earth, and loving. He had no idea the woman he loved carried such coldness in her heart. When the guests arrived, everything seemed magical. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, serving drinks and appetizers. That's when David entered. Tall, polite, and wearing the neat black and white uniform, he carried himself with quiet dignity. To everyone else, he was just another server. But if anyone looked closely, they would have seen the flicker of recognition in his eyes when he spotted Michael at the altar. He smiled softly. It had been years since they last met. As David placed a tray of champagne glasses near Lena, she frowned. "Who allowed him to serve here?" she whispered to her maid of honor. "He doesn't look like he belongs." Her voice carried just enough for a few people to hear. The maid tried to calm her, but Lena's pride wouldn't let it go. Minutes later, as David accidentally brushed past her table, one glass tipped over, spilling a few drops onto her expensive gown. The hall went silent. Lena's eyes widened not from shock but fury. "You idiot!" she screamed, snatching a piece of cake from the table and throwing it at him. It hit David's face, the cream sliding down his cheek. Gasps filled the room. Michael froze. Mrs. Collins covered her mouth in disbelief. The hall that had been filled with laughter now stood frozen in shame. David didn't speak a word. He simply wiped his face, looked at her once, and quietly walked away. But what Lena didn't know was that this waiter wasn't just anyone. He was Michael's childhood friend, the one who saved his life years ago. And now, the truth was about to crash her perfect wedding. Before the next chapter begins, take a deep breath, because sometimes people hide their ugliest hearts behind their brightest smiles. If stories like this move you, stories that expose the truth of racism and pride, then subscribe to Stained Humanity and stand with those who still believe kindness is stronger than hate. Have you ever judged someone in a single glance, only to realize later how wrong you were? That's what was about to happen inside the Crystal Garden Hall. After the shocking scene, the guests whispered among themselves. Some defended Lena, saying it was her big day. Others looked away in disgust. But the silence that followed was louder than any apology could have been. Michael's hands trembled. He had seen many sides of Lena, cheerful, charming, even kind, but never this one. His heart sank as he looked toward David, who was quietly picking up the shattered glass pieces from the floor, his face still wet with cake and humiliation. "Lena, what did you just do?" Michael's voice broke through the murmurs. She turned, still furious. "He ruined my dress, Michael. Do you expect me to just smile while some waiter—" "Enough," Michael cut her off. His tone was cold. The music had stopped, the photographer had lowered his camera, and even the children had gone silent. Mrs. Collins stood up slowly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "You just threw food at the wrong man, Lena." Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Collins turned toward David. "Would you please come here, dear?" David hesitated, glancing at Michael, who nodded with quiet encouragement. The crowd watched as David approached the stage, wiping his hands nervously on his apron. "Lena," Mrs. Collins continued, "this man standing before you isn't just a waiter. He's David, Michael's best friend since childhood. The man who once saved my son's life." Gasps filled the room. Someone dropped a glass. Michael looked down, ashamed, while Lena's face lost its color. "What?" she whispered. Mrs. Collins nodded. "Yes. When Michael was 17, he nearly drowned in the river near the old bridge. It was David who pulled him out. Without him, there would be no wedding today." Lena's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Her pride wanted to speak, but guilt crushed every word before it could leave her mouth. David bowed his head. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone," he said softly. I just came to help. I didn't even know it was your wedding, Michael. I'm sorry for the disturbance." His words carried more grace than anyone expected. The crowd looked at him not as a servant, but as a man of dignity. Meanwhile, Lena stood frozen, her mind spinning. Shame burned her cheeks as she realized the truth. Michael turned toward her. "Lena, this is the man you insulted, the man I owe my life to." His voice cracked, but his disappointment was clear. "You didn't just disrespect him, you disrespected everything I stand for." The lights above shimmered, reflecting off the tears in Mrs. Collins's eyes. Lena wanted to disappear, but the world was watching. And the woman who once thought she had everything now felt completely empty inside. Sometimes, it's not the rich or powerful who stand tall, it's the humble souls who never stop showing grace. If this moment made your heart feel heavy, remember to subscribe to Stained Humanity. Every story here reminds us humanity is worth more than pride, and love means nothing without respect. Have you ever realized the truth too late, when the damage was already done? That was exactly where Lena stood, her heart pounding under the weight of her own actions. The wedding hall was silent, but every eye in the room felt like a mirror reflecting her shame. The woman who had dreamed of being adored was now being judged by everyone she wanted to impress. The music had stopped. Even the flowers seemed to wilt under the tension. Lena took a step forward, her voice trembling. "David, I didn't know, David shook his head gently. "You didn't need to know my name to treat me with respect." His words were calm, but they cut deep. Michael turned away, unable to look at her. He was torn between love and disappointment. Every memory they shared now felt stained by what she had done. "Lena," he said quietly, "I thought you loved people for who they are, not what they look like." Tears filled her eyes, smudging the makeup that once made her feel perfect. I thought I did." But her voice cracked as she realized even she didn't believe her own words. Mrs. Collins stood beside David. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the truest test of character comes when we think no one is watching. But someone always is." The guests whispered, some recording the moment on their phones, others turning away in discomfort. The image of the bride throwing food at a man who once saved her husband would spread faster than the wedding photos ever could. Lena's father approached her, his face filled with disappointment. "You've brought shame to yourself, Lena, to all of us." She broke down, clutching her gown as tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, her money, her name, her beauty, none of it mattered. David turned to Michael. "I didn't come here to ruin anything. I came to help, but maybe this needed to happen." Michael nodded slowly. "Maybe it did." He walked toward Lena. The crowd waited for his decision. Would he forgive her, or would he walk away? Lena looked up at him, her voice shaking. "Please, Michael, don't end this." "I made a mistake." Michael sighed deeply. "I don't know if this wedding can go on, Lena. Not today. Love without respect isn't love at all." And with that, he handed the ring back to the officiant. The room fell into stunned silence. The fairy tale wedding had turned into a painful lesson about pride and prejudice. Lena collapsed into a chair, her tears falling silently. David walked away quietly, not with anger, but with grace, because dignity doesn't need revenge. Sometimes the loudest lessons come from moments of silence. If this story made your heart ache or opened your eyes to what real humanity means, don't forget to subscribe to Stained Humanity. Because every story here reminds us respect is not earned by wealth, but by how we treat others when no one's watching. Have you ever wished you could go back and erase a single moment that changed everything? That's what Lena felt every day after the wedding that never happened. A week had passed since that disastrous day at the Crystal Garden Hall. The world had moved on, but for Lena, time had stopped. The video of her throwing food at David had gone viral, millions had seen it, and comments filled with anger and disappointment flooded every corner of social media. She stayed inside, afraid to face the world that once adored her. Her family was silent. Michael hadn't spoken to her since he left the hall. The ring still sat on her bedside table, a painful reminder of what pride had cost her. One evening she looked in the mirror, the same mirror she had admired herself in before the wedding, but this time she didn't see beauty. She saw the woman she had become. Cold, proud, cruel. That night, she made a decision. She needed to apologize, not online, not in a post, but in person. Lena found out that David worked part-time at a small community center outside the city, a place that helped poor children get free meals and education. When she arrived, the kids were laughing, chasing each other with pure joy. David was there serving food and smiling, his sleeves rolled up, his hands gentle as he helped the little ones eat. Lena froze for a moment, guilt choking her, then she stepped forward slowly. "David," she whispered. He turned around. His eyes widened slightly, not in anger, but in quiet surprise. "Lena, I came to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling, "not because the world saw what I did, but because I finally did." David listened silently as she continued. "I grew up thinking I was better than others because of what I had, how I looked, but you showed me who I really am, and I hate it. You didn't deserve that humiliation." "No one does," he sighed softly, looking down at the floor before meeting her eyes again. "Lena, forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about learning from it." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Do you forgive me?" David nodded gently. "I forgave you the moment it happened, because carrying hate doesn't heal anyone." She broke down, covering her face with her hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Just then, Michael entered the center. He had been helping David with donations for the kids. His eyes met Lena's. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Michael said quietly, "You finally found the courage to face what you did. That means something." Lena looked at him hopefully. "Does that mean," he shook his head softly, "not today, but maybe one day, when you truly understand love without pride?" Lena nodded, tears still flowing, but for the first time they weren't from shame. They were from change. She walked out of that center a different woman, broken, but reborn. Because sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from pain inflicted on us, but from the pain we cause others. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that humanity is worth more than status or skin, subscribe to Stained Humanity. Because here, every story isn't just told, it's felt. And sometimes, feeling is the first step toward becoming better.